This is a Dynamics 365 podcast focusing on the ingredients of a successful Dynamics 365 practice. Your host is Business Solution MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as NZ365 Guy. You can find me on Twitter or LinkedIn by searching for NZ365 Guy, or if you want to engage my professional services, go to cloverbase.com. For more information on this interview, show notes, feedback and resources mentioned, or to suggest a guest for future episodes, please go to nz365guy.com/podcast. Thanks to Kingsway Soft for sponsoring the Dynamics 365 Practice Podcast. Kingsway Soft is a leading integration solution provider offering software solutions that make data integration affordable and painlessly easy. Thousands of enterprise clients from over 70 countries and regions rely on Kingsway Soft to integrate data with various business systems in order to drive their business efficiency and leverage their information assets. Kingsway Soft is a leading provider of Microsoft Dynamics integration software, including Dynamics 365, CRM, AX, NAV, GP, SL, as well as many other applications. Check out their version 6 release of the SSIS prod featuring 7 new components, including support for Azure Blob Storage, Google Sheets, and new Data Profiler transformation component. Hi everyone, I'm here with James Phillips. In this episode, we're going to be focusing on his role as the head of Microsoft Business Applications. James Phillips is a Microsoft Corporate Vice President and leader of the company's Business Application Group, a product development organization with over 5,000 team members spanning the globe. His team build and operate Microsoft SaaS, APaaS, and Developer PaaS services, Dynamics 365, Stream, the Power APaaS platform, which includes Power BI, Power Apps, Flow, and Common Data Services, and a wider range of Azure services, including App Service, Functions, Logic Apps, API Management, and Media Services. James joined Microsoft in 2012 as a strategy advisor to Satya Nadella, then president of the Microsoft Cloud and Enterprise Division. Before joining Microsoft, James was founder and CEO of multiple software companies, held engineering, product management, corporate development, and marketing leadership roles at Intel, VMware, and Synopsys, and spent 2 years as a technology investment banker with UBS PaineWebber, advising public and private software companies on M&A strategy and execution. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Mathematics and an MBA with honors from the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. James, thanks for coming on the Dynamics 365 podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm super excited to be here. I try to, at least for an hour or two a week, do something with the community and sort of to give back. It's amazing how much energy there is in the Dynamics community, and I'm grateful to be part of it and happy to do this.
Excellent. So I understand that you're into mountain biking and drones and vacations in Costa Rica. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. So I love mountain biking. I wish I had more time to do it. I spend most of my time, it seems like these days, on a trainer in my basement. But it's something that I picked up in California when we were living sort of near the mountains, and I've been able to continue it here. On the drone front, I've got a DJI Inspire 1 that we use, from time to time, and again, something I wish I had more time for.
Yeah. So can you tell us a bit about your journey and what's led you to end up becoming the corporate vice president of Microsoft Business Applications?
So I've spent most of my career sort of doing entrepreneurial things. I've started a few companies and have had some experience in just about every functional discipline across some larger companies. And along the way, I met Satya Nadella. And about 6 years ago, when he was sort of new in role as the president of the server and tools business, asked me if I'd consider coming up to Microsoft and help him think about sort of how we would take the company and transition it to sort of get aligned for the cloud opportunity that was in front of us. And so joined him, spent the first year working on our strategy for sort of morphing from primarily on-premises software company to a cloud-oriented company. And then for the next 5 years, by the way, he got promoted to CEO at the end of that, so did a good job. And I spent the next 5 years in a series of operating roles, sort of executing on the vision that we had put in place, culminating today in the role that I have leading our business applications, our application platform as a service offerings, and our developer PaaS offerings.
So can you tell us about what excites you about your role?
So I think the thing that excites me the most is the opportunity to meet with leaders across many businesses around the globe, across just about every industry. I mean, that's probably one of the best things about being at Microsoft in a senior role is the opportunity to open doors and to engage with other leaders who are struggling with digital transformation, the opportunities in front of them in their industries, learning a lot about what their challenges are, and using that knowledge to come back and sort of formulate how we can help them solve those problems and partner better.
Excellent. So your portfolio, I know it's a lot larger than just Dynamics, but 2018 is shaping up to be an exciting year for Dynamics 365. Power Apps, Flow, CDS. What's on your mind when you consider these?
So it is in fact shaping up to be an unbelievably exciting year. We've got a lot that we're going to talk about in the spring, even more coming in the fall, and Power Apps, Flow, the common data service, and I would also add Power BI to the mix there. If you combine all those assets, the Dynamics business applications and that rich platform across the power tier, if you will, we are, I think, getting lined up to provide an unmatchable collection of capabilities for sort of out-of-the-box business functionality in an integrated way across the entire business process spectrum: marketing, sales, service, operations, finance, talent, commerce, but also to allow our customers to sort of tune these applications, make them exactly what they need them to be, to build net new applications that are web accessible or via mobile, to join with Office 365 data, to manage or to take advantage of the power of LinkedIn. So there's just so much happening right now. And I think the most exciting part is the unification and sort of the synergistic value that we're going to be delivering to our customers by bringing all of these products and services together and sort of getting this collective power. That, to me, is the most exciting part of what we're going to do in 2018.
Excellent. So if you're a traditional Microsoft partner, where would you start if you be looking at investing from that, if you from those discrete applications point of view?
So I think the opportunity that I think our most progressive partners are embracing is sort of twofold. Well, maybe let's call it threefold. So first, they're considering, unlike in the past where there was high specialization across either CRM or ERP, increasingly what we're seeing our partners do is to take a sort of a higher order view of business applications, or a more sort of comprehensive view. Again, looking across marketing, sales, service, operations, finance, talent, commerce, and thinking holistically about the business of their customers and how to employ all of those applications to enable customers to go on their own digital transformation journey. And so on the application side, that's one. Look broadly across the business application spectrum versus simply pigeonholing in CRM or ERP. And I think increasingly, it's sort of mandatory, because if you think about the changes in the way we engage our customers, if you think about the nature of the products and services that we're delivering, they're increasingly connected. And so, you deploy a product somewhere, or you execute a service, or engage with a customer providing a service via a mobile application, you've got a tether in some ways and data flowing back to you as a company, which feeds right into that customer engagement cycle. The kind of people that you need to join your organization that can engage in these digitally transformed processes is different than the kind of people perhaps we needed before. And so being able to think holistically about these opportunities and to stitch them together, I think is kind of makes that number one mandatory. The second thing I'd say is look deeply at Power Apps and Flow and the common data service. The ability to very rapidly create compelling, almost sort of what look like professionally developed applications is enabled by Power Apps, leveraging Flow and the common data service. And what we're seeing happen is, the kinds of applications that most companies wish they had, but could never afford to have in the past because it would have required true custom software development, which for most is risky. They don't have the expertise to do it. It's out of reach. Power Apps really does allow you to start knocking down all these business processes, automating them in a way that everyone wanted to in the past, but just couldn't. It stuns me how many people are still using whiteboards, sticky notes, clipboards, pieces of paper, and pens to run their core business processes because you just can't find an app for, mybusiness.com. The things that make each of our customers unique are the things that perhaps you could get the most benefit from automating. And yet, because of those limitations and expertise and cost, people haven't done it. Power Apps makes that possible. So that's number two. And then third, the sort of the explosion of data and the ability to gain insight from that data, the ability to take those insights and to turn them into action and sort of intelligent action is the third opportunity. And so Power BI and the analytical capabilities that we have in Azure and as surfaced through Dynamics in some cases, I think is the third opportunity. So full spectrum business process, deep look at Power Apps, lots of opportunity in data with Power BI.
Yeah, certainly a lot of opportunity. So just switching gears now to leadership. So what are your thoughts on leading a team?
So it's exciting. I mean, I think that the opportunity to have thousands of the smartest people that I've ever worked with, lined up against this opportunity for our customers and our partners is a privilege and an honor. And it is it's a leadership challenge. I mean, I think that anytime that you've got incredibly smart people going after an incredibly hard problem, which is sort of pulling all of this stuff together, it's a challenge to sort of get everyone pulling on the same end of the rope. And it's for me, step zero is to find great leaders beneath me, that I can count on, that are really the ones that are going to do the heavy lifting, and then they're going to do the same thing. The only way you're going to be able to ensure that you've harnessed the collective capability of that many people is through strong successive leadership as you sort of break down the work into chunks. For me though, it is in some ways you can think abstractly about team size and leadership as really not changing regardless of the scale at which you're operating. My experience is that I can perhaps have maybe 10 to 15 direct reports and do a good job of, being in touch with those leaders and spending the appropriate amount of time with them while allowing them to sort of have enough space to run their own business. And it doesn't matter if I've got 50 people, 500 people, or 5,000 people, I can deal with about 10 to 15 directly. And so it really does sort of turn on how do you construct that next layer down correctly? How do you ensure that you have clearly communicated sort of what we collectively as sort of that combined leadership team are aiming for? How do you ensure that there's clarity of mission, charter, the ability to execute with some degree of autonomy, have everyone lined up against a mission that they can go off and execute independently? And yet when all of them execute their missions well, the collective whole is realized. And again, I don't think that changes at any scale. I don't think you ever reach sort of a step function or a discontinuity where that approach doesn't work. And it has served me well as I've sort of scaled up over the years.
So what are some of the challenges that come with leading a team of that size?
Well, I think anytime you start to gather, large numbers of people, the biggest challenge always is communication. It's easy when it's you know what you're trying to accomplish. When it's you and five other people, you can talk to each other constantly every day, sit in the same room and have a mind meld. When it's 5,000 people and you've got layers of leadership and in many cases teams that are spread across the globe, communication becomes a challenge. And ensuring that everyone understands sort of the bigger picture, what we're trying to accomplish, how they can accomplish that larger mission in concert with everyone else, and sort of keeping everyone marching in the same direction, while again allowing for autonomous execution is a challenge. And so you've got different techniques that you use when teams scale up vis-a-vis communication and the ability to create clarity for the larger team. And that's probably the biggest challenge, particularly when you start to have teams spread around the globe and you've got time zone issues and half the team sleeping when the other half is working. That's as you and I can probably, I think it's morning for me on a Saturday, and I think it's probably Sunday. I don't know what time it is for you.
Yeah, it's 7 a.m. in the morning in the future.
Okay, got it. Yes.
Exactly. So how do you manage competing priorities?
The only way to do that is to really focus on being thoughtful about what really matters. Having some principles around what's going to move the needle for this business and for this team, and really sort of thinking through carefully what are the critical success factors. What is our focus? What are the things that we must do collectively as a team in order to be successful and to realize the vision that we've put out in front of us? And once you've got that degree of clarity around what you're trying to do, then you can start looking at sort of what I do next is, okay, where do I want to think about allocating my time? I've actually got a sheet of paper that breaks down for me exactly where I want to invest my time. And it spans things like development of the team. It spans things like product strategy, customer relationships, partner relationships, some operational details around budgeting, that sort of thing. And so, here's where I want to spend my time and where I don't want to spend my time. And here's how I'm going to measure whether I achieved what I envisioned for myself this year across all those categories. And then I use that every week. I sit down with my chief of staff and we go through sort of what's my next week look like? Where are we investing the time? Does that map back to what we really wanted to accomplish this year? And I'm pretty thoughtful about that. Sometimes, well, in fact, most of the time, it means I'm not doing about 1,000 things I'd love to be doing, but that unfortunately aren't sort of at the top of the list relative to what we're trying to accomplish.
So to change gears and look at more the application or the suites of applications that you're working with, first of all, Dynamics 365. What do you see the long-term future for on-premise, for example, beyond 5 to 10 years? Do you think we'll be fully in the cloud within that time frame?
Absolutely not. No question about it. So this is an interesting one. The challenge that we have is defining what it means to be cloud versus on-prem. So one of the things that Microsoft does uniquely is sort of or one of the capabilities that we uniquely have is the ability to both deliver on-premises software, and we've got this planet scale cloud that and we know how to run global scale services. And I'm going to argue that those two capabilities are a forever thing. It will always be the case that you should run software where it makes the most sense. Now, in the past, I think a lot of folks sort of had this either or view of the world. Either I run my business application in the cloud or I run my business application on premises. And I think it's an and. I think that forever, I'm going to want to have perhaps software running in a retail environment where regardless of the ability to connect to the internet, I can still do transactions. Or if I am running a laser cutter in a manufacturing facility, the ability to continue to control that laser cutter regardless of connectivity to the internet and having that software executing local to that business process. Now, I will also probably have software running in the cloud that does what it does best, which is to gather data from all of those various points of presence to provide sort of a global optima for analytics, for intelligence that I can then use to feed back down to all of those points of presence on premises. And so I think that we have to define what we mean by in the cloud and on premises. But when you do it in a true hybrid form, not an either or, but an and, my belief is that this is going to be important for all time.
So if you take a look at on-premise, for example, let's say Dynamics running on-premise, but you've got a massive capability in Azure and Office 365 around intelligence and insights. How are you going to add to or combine that hybrid approach that allows the on-prem customer to really leverage all the power that sits in Azure around insights?
So we're actually, we're doing a lot of that today. So the ability to, if we just think in terms of current world, fully on-prem Dynamics 365, there's a lot to say there about sort of hybrid capability. So we've got the ability to, in an automated way, take the data in your in those business applications and seamlessly replicate it up into the cloud to aggregate it from across many subsidiaries or divisions, perhaps, and then to get data out of it through things like our on-prem data gateway, through Logic App, through BizTalk Server, through a whole host of connectors that we provide. And so we've really invested to provide through ExpressRoute, for example, also, which provides for a secure sort of connectivity from the cloud back to your on-premises environment. So we've got tons and tons of assets that can be deployed to allow you to embrace holistically both the solutions that you've deployed on premises as well as those in the cloud, and to get that sort of hybrid and value out of them.
If we look at Flow, it's a business application that now has over 200 connections and growing. However, today, the focus, if you like, seems to be more on the power user. What are your thoughts on the future of taking it really to the enterprise?
So it's an interesting question. So many people probably don't know this, but Flow is actually backed by Azure Logic Apps. And in fact, when you create a Flow, you are in fact creating an Azure Logic App. It is one and the same from a back-end execution perspective. And Azure Logic Apps is our enterprise business process orchestration connectivity system, paired with BizTalk Server, which provides an on-premises footprint for similar functionality. And so for organizations that want to take advantage of our business process automation and connectivity stack, you have a lot of choices. Flow is very approachable. It's easy for individuals or departments to rapidly construct workflows and automations that can be leveraged across Office, Dynamics, but there's this truly seamless upgrade path if you want to have more enterprise level control over those processes by simply adopting Logic Apps, and that's an amazing sort of grow up story that we believe is unique.
Brilliant. Moving to Power Apps, we're seeing business applications moving towards, lower code or high productivity that minimizes costs and supports rapid change while providing full access to existing data, often found within CRM and ERP systems, to name a few. What role do you see Power Apps playing in enabling this?
So Power Apps is our low-code, high-productivity platform, and I have been absolutely blown away by what I'm seeing customers and partners do with Power Apps. It's amazing, and the unlike sort of other low-code environments where it's largely declarative, largely forms over data. You start with data. Here's what I'm trying to do, and it automatically creates a form for you. Power Apps does that, of course, but it gives you this unbelievable ability to construct the user interface. It literally, you can create apps that very much look like they were custom developed, leveraging the SDKs of the platform. It gives you the ability to express without writing code through a set of formulas that if you've used Microsoft Excel will feel very familiar, that allow you to create functionality that was inexpressible in sort of traditional low-code platforms, and with Power Apps, where there's native built-in integration with Azure Functions, API management, Logic Apps, and so you get this truly unique spectrum of capabilities where you can start with forms over data, declarative, drift down into imperative with simple formulas where you've got layout control and the ability to really embrace the device, all the way down to the ability to embrace professionally developed code as building blocks for those power apps. We are extremely excited about this platform, and I think it is perhaps the thing that, I think I may have said this earlier, that has me most excited about where we're heading this year.
Yeah, fantastic. So what excites me is CDS, Common Data Services. What excites you about the developments in this area?
So for sure, the most exciting part about CDS is that we're starting to see real convergence now around it, both across the Microsoft portfolio, and there are a number of partners who are lining up to support it as well with their solutions. This is an area where I want to be a little bit careful because there is just a massive amount of sort of interesting developments that are in the pipeline here that we're going to roll out pretty soon. And so I don't want to steal anyone's thunder, but suffice it to say that, across Dynamics, Office, Bing, and our other assets, and across partners like Adobe and many others, there's just a lot of energy and ecosystem building up around this common data model as surfaced through CDS. And, stay tuned on that one. This is a rich area of investment.
Yeah, exciting times. So tell me, what steps do you take to make sure customers are front and center of all your product development?
Well, that's easy. So if I sort of hearken back in some ways to the leadership question earlier, how do you manage a team that's as large? And I talked about the first thing being that you sort of agree on what you're trying to collectively accomplish and then organize for autonomy and federated execution. The next thing you have to do is put in place clear measures, clear metrics, so that you've got sort of telemetry, if you will, on the execution of the organization. And there is exactly, and I mean exactly, one thing that I sort of measure the success of my leaders in any sort of product organization on, and that is customer satisfaction. Whether it is through NPS scores, NSAT, or other satisfaction measures, that is the sort of the linchpin or the lead metric around which every single product leader in any business that I run is measured. And so it really does put the entire focus on, are we building things that customers love? Are they able to count on it? Does it perform as expected? When they run into issues, are we helping them sort of unwind from whatever problem they find themselves in? All of that can be sort of wrapped into a satisfaction measure. Now, obviously, it's sort of like a decomposition tree from there. If people aren't happy, then you need to go have metrics to understand exactly why so that you can fix it. But keeping that customer sat metric front and center and as the primary measure of success for my leaders does a good job of focusing people on the right thing. And the right thing is always making customers happy.
Yeah, fantastic. So can you tell me what type of tools or methods do you use to engage with customers to kind of like get ideas that might end up in the roadmaps and things like that?
So there are a lot of mechanisms and a lot of tools that we use in order to go get good signal on what we need to invest in. Some of it is what we hear directly from customers. And so I mentioned earlier our use of NPS or NSAT. A lot of that's done digitally. Some of it's done through surveys. And when we ask people, are you happy or not? We often follow by saying, what could we do better? And so you've got sort of direct signal that's either through in-product NPS prompts or through conversations where you're sort of collecting and discerning patterns where you've got opportunities to improve. We monitor our services ourselves, even without asking customers, are you happy or not? We can sort of infer, It's almost like a synthetic NPS in some ways by simply looking at, how long is it taking forms to load? How many errors are occurring? We can ourselves instrument and monitor the delivery of our services, and from that, we can identify opportunities to improve that we know will, reasonably know that it will make customers happier. And then finally, we use things like Dynamics Voice of Customer, User Voice, Lithium. We've got a bunch of forums. We monitor Twitter and other social media, LinkedIn. And so there's just a ton of digital signal that allows us to understand sort of what's working and what's not. And I try to meet with at least 100 customers face to face a year. I'm way ahead of that this year because I've been doing a heck of a lot of traveling. But even through sort of just high touch face to face engagements, you add that to all the digital side, and you get a lot of signal on what's important and what's not.
So what patterns are you seeing then from Microsoft partners that are executing well when it comes to implementing business applications for customers?
So I think, one of the questions that we had earlier was, what should you do as a partner? And I'll kind of go back to that and say that the ones who are doing well, the partners who are most successful are the ones who are thinking across the business process spectrum: marketing, sales, service, operations, finance, talent, commerce, and who have invested to understand deeply our application development stack, starting with Power Apps down into Azure and a top CDS. And those who are embracing data and the ability to analyze data via things like Power BI and our other Azure Analytics services.
Let's just look at the future. Can you share with me your thoughts on AI and what role it's going to play in the future of business, particularly in business apps?
So if we think about business applications, let's just focus on CRM or sort of sales automation for a moment and use that as a case study. So historically, and I'm going to argue like for all time, if you look at a CRM system, whether it was running on a mainframe, on a mini computer, in a client server world, or even last generation SaaS, the systems were more or less all the same. It's like forms over data, manage your leads, opportunities, customers, accounts, just sort of record keeping systems in many ways. And many people call them systems of oppression. They're really, that particular class of business application was really about ensuring that there was enough visibility for forecasting and for sales managers to sort of understand pipeline. Salespeople hate them. They're sort of mandatory in order to have some order, if you will, to the and predictability. But they're not systems that anyone really loves, if we're being honest with ourselves. We're on the cusp of a fundamental change there. We are on the brink of a reimagining of business applications for the first time ever in decades. Powered by AI with, sort of delivery mechanisms via mobile, in the future augmented reality, where the experience becomes not one of oppression, but one of enablement. In many ways. I mean, you think about Dynamics 365, and again, I'm just going to sort of pick on Salesforce automation. With Dynamics 365, if certainly we have an opportunities tab like everyone else does, where you're looking at your open sort of the opportunities that you're hunting. But unlike other systems, there's a very special column in there that gives you sort of the health of the opportunity, that gives you insight into the urgency of your need to engage in that opportunity, and that tells you exactly what you should do next in order to move that opportunity toward a close. And this is all done through AI. If you're using Office 365 and Dynamics 365, we've got the ability to look at the conversations that are happening between a salesperson and customers. We're able to take LinkedIn data and leverage that to understand who you're talking to and not talking to. We're able to see if emails are being responded to and in what time frame. We're able to see the participants in given meetings and when those meetings are occurring and the history. All of this signal, the communication patterns, the sentiment analysis of those communications, all of that has allowed us to train models that can now tell a salesperson not just here's all your opportunities, but here are the 6 things that you need to focus on. Here's why you should focus on them, and here's what you should do. And that's all AI. And that turns what was a system of oppression into a system of empowerment. And it makes people love the system because it actually helps them do their jobs better versus simply being a surveillance system in some ways that allows management to understand what's happening. And that, to me, is a game changer. And we are really only on the leading edge of this transformation, but it's real and it's enabled by data and AI.
Awesome. So if you can look at, let's say, the next 5 to 10 years in technology, what's your opinion? What do you see potentially happening?
So for me, I'm a huge fan of augmented reality, mixed reality. I'll just share a personal thing here. I'm horrible with names and faces. It's just my brain is not wired to remember those things well. And it would change my life probably in many ways if I was able to, when I approached a person, to see their name hovering above their head. To have some sort of record of, the last time we got together and maybe the history of our conversations, something that would allow me to be, frankly, more comfortable in that encounter. I mean, that would change my life in many ways. And I think this ability to leverage technology and to make it ambient in some ways in our lives, both personally and professionally, to me is perhaps the most game-changing opportunity in front of us. And we're not even on, first base on mixed reality. I mean, Microsoft, obviously, with HoloLens and our investments there, is way out in front in many ways. And yet there's just so much more work to do there and so much more potential. That, to me, is the most exciting opportunity that we have in front of us, if you're measuring in decades.
So one final question before we get into some quickfire questions. The year ahead, is there anything that you can share that's coming that you're most excited about?
So I think that, I've sort of hinted at this earlier, but there are going to be a lot of developments around the Common Data Service and around Power Apps. To me, that's for the Dynamics faithful, that is the area to watch. There is just a massive amount of stuff coming down the pipeline, and I'm really excited to start, talking about it. And it's not going to be long from now, my friend.
Fantastic. Okay, some quick fire questions just to wrap up. What books do you recommend most to people and why?
So from a business just fundamentals perspective, I'm a huge fan of Michael Porter. It's sort of classics: Competitive Strategy, Competitive Advantage. From a leadership perspective, I read this book, Forged in Crisis by Nancy Cohn, which I really enjoyed. Those are a few suggestions.
Excellent. What are your favorite apps and why?
My favorite app is Uber. Because it gets me where I need to go very quickly, almost regardless of where I am. I'm a fan of Strava because it allows me to keep track of my bike rides and sort of keeps me on target and allows me to have some accountability for my personal metrics around fitness. Those are the two I can't live without, probably.
Do you have any daily rituals that kind of set you on the right path for a successful day?
Exercise, for sure. I try to wake up every morning and get on the bike, whether it's a physical bike ride outside, which unfortunately frequently I don't get to do, but I at least get on the trainer down in the basement and get some virtual miles in. I've been using Zwift, which is a sort of virtual reality game almost that's powered by your bicycle, your exercise bike, and so that's been kind of fun.
What recommendations do you have for people wanting a career in business applications, just starting out maybe?
So I'm a big fan of STEM education. So if I believe that if you're in the technology business, and regardless of how far up the stack you get into business applications, it's still technology beneath. And I think having a firm foundation in tech is important. And so, learn how to write software, somehow be sort of hands-on technology-wise. But if you're really focused up stack with business applications, I think it's also important to combine that with either a deep understanding horizontally of business economics, and sort of the fundamentals there, and or the depth in a particular industry, a vertical where you can go deep and have that expertise.
Who do you recommend as a guest on future podcasts?
So I think Charles Lamanna comes immediately to mind. Charles is the leader in my organization who's running the Common Data Service and Power Apps investments, and Flow, by the way, and also Logic Apps. And so I would suggest trying to loop Charles into one of these.
Awesome. James, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show, and I look forward to meeting you in a couple of weeks at the MVP Summit. Before you go, if people want to follow you online, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter, James Phillips at Microsoft, and that's probably the best way to follow me. Or you can follow me on LinkedIn.
This has been a Dynamics 365 podcast focusing on the ingredients of a successful Dynamics 365 practice. Your host was Business Solution MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as NZ365 Guy. For more information on this interview, show notes, feedback, and resources mentioned, or if you know someone who would be a great guest for future episodes, please go to nz365guy.com/podcast. Also, check out the other great Dynamics 365 podcasts on CRM audio, like the following.
Hi, I'm Britta.
And I'm Matt, and some people call us the morning show of the CRM audio network.
Is it because we're the happy, chipper ones?
Must be. Either that or it sounds like I have a future talking about traffic and weather.
Well, it's certainly not because we record in the morning.
I think it's because we jam-pack so much Dynamics 365 goodness into 30 minutes or less.
Probably, and because we do it all for the end users and the system admins.
Sounds good to me. And if that sounds good to you out there in podcast land, you can listen in at implementthis.org.